I could swipe you, sir.
Rob me, and I'll hunt you down with dogs.
What's up, y'all? It's Liam Crowley with Screen Rant. We're here at New York Comic Con, and we're kicking off our star-studded weekend with the team behind A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms. Guys, thank you so much for taking the time to chat today.
No problem. To be here.
Ira, to start with you, you worked on House of the Dragon prior to this. And even though we're honing in on Dunk and Egg's story, and it's a lot more intimate of a relationship we have in this series, there is still a Targaryen layer to this show. So can you talk about working on House of the Dragon, playing with that House Targaryen for so much, and then how that maybe influenced the Targaryen elements of this series?
Look, it's funny because House of the Dragon was a pre-pandemic room, if you would believe that. You know, that it was season 1 was a long time ago, and it was actually my real true introduction into, you know, writing for this world. And you know, being with Ryan in that room and just seeing his enthusiasm the entire time for these characters, you know, sort of fed into all of ours as we were writing this. The Targaryens are one of the most interesting, misunderstood families of all, you know, great fantasy. And getting to explore that in depth with him was so much fun. Then putting them into the background of this show, it was very helpful to have that base, obviously, because then you can not do as much, but still have that force be very powerful when it comes into our show. And obviously, seen through Dunk's lens, when he comes in, we want him to feel the way that we would feel, you know, with the royal family coming into town, coming in and making their presence known, and Dunk just being this lowly, you know, absolute bottom of the barrel character. You know, we get to flip the whole script. We get to see what it's like to come in and first of all, get to meet your heroes, which is, you know, was sort of like what it was for me coming in, you know, for the first season of House of the Dragon, you know, and getting to see how a Game of Thrones show is made, you know, and then delivering that up. And that whole experience for Dunk and for the character, you know, was, you could transfer a lot into the writing of it.
Yeah, I was going to say there's a bit of an everyman element to Dunk, which I found so refreshing to center around a character like that. But there's also a bit of physicality to Dunk as well. Peter, you're a former rugby player. Did that help influence at all the physicality you brought to this role?
Yeah, I suppose, yeah, I mean, I probably spent like the last 15 years playing rugby from a young age, and then lucky enough to like represent my country and stuff like that. And I suppose that there was a lot of physical training and preparation that went through those years of my life, that I suppose lent itself to things like combat skills and stuff, and maybe even horse riding and things like that. It was easy to sort of get into the thick of those things in preparation. So it did help massively for sure. And I think even things like wearing armor and stuff, and like wearing heavier things, like on set, is probably contributed towards that, of having to lift weights for a long time and stuff like that. But yeah.
And the familiarity continued with where you shot this, because I know Belfast is a little bit further away from where you're from in Galway, but still your home country of Ireland. Did it feel good to be home?
Oh, great. It's I've been lucky enough to, since I sort of began my journey in acting, most of the time I've worked on a show. We did 2 seasons of a show called Wreck. It was like a horror comedy thing, which I'm so proud of. It was like my first time moving away, and my first time being away from home for the actual job, and it was up in Belfast, and I just fell in love with that city. I really, really adore that place. And then, like, once you leave the city and go to places like the Mournes, you just get this like unreal experience of landscape and things that where you don't feel like, you really do feel like you're in Westeros in those scenes. And it really sort of contributed to, I suppose, helping portray those different scenes and bring them to life.
There's something special about getting to go back to those real locations and now have this cinematic experience when you're there because you've seen it on the silver screen in that way.
For sure.
Dexter, you're one of the youngest members of the Game of Thrones family. Congratulations on taking on the role of Egg. Are you too young for Game of Thrones? What was your experience with this series before you got cast?
So I've never watched any of the Game of Thrones or
Thank God.
Dragons, but the funny thing is, way before I even heard about this auditions and anything, me and my mum were out because I did another job, and there was this big throne, and we didn't realise, but it was the Game of Thrones throne.
The Iron Throne.
And I sat on it. And then later on, and then we get the audition, but years later, and then we like look back because we're trying to find like a script or whatever, and we see that photo and we're like, OMG, I can't believe we took that photo when I was so young, and then I ended up being on it.
Have you shared it on social?
I don't know if we have.
When the series comes around, you have to recycle that photo because that is, I've heard the stories before of there's a Marvel actor named Simu Liu who before he was cast as Shang-Chi, years before, he was like, hey Marvel, let's talk, #Shang-Chi. And then years later it comes to fruition. So that's a fun little full circle moment. You decked out for New York Comic Con. Can you show off this custom jacket you got here?
So this is my spray painted jacket, actually by a world famous spray artist called Eject. This is the back here. It's like a cartoon.
And we got the Duncan egg
sword
on the top.
Yeah.
Yep.
Can we talk about that relationship? You guys are it feels like you guys have worked together for years, and obviously this is your first time working together, hopefully the first of many seasons. Can you talk about developing that dynamic between Duncan Egg and making this feel like such a lived-in relationship, like the start of something very special?
So, I mean, it literally has been years. I filmed it when I was 9 and I'm 11 now. So, yeah, we built such a bond in this show. Mainly the arcades.
Yep.
Arcades is like our thing.
Yeah.
And we at the start we weren't too close, and it was still good. And then later on we built a relationship, and now we're like best buddies.
For sure. And there's where we shot it around the studios in Belfast. There's a huge, massive arcade.
Yeah.
So we just developed an arcade.
And then we
addiction.
just we keep our tickets.
Keep
so
our
now we've got like 100,000 tickets.
Physical tickets too.
Yeah.
It's like,
Because now the arcades, they replace them with the digital cards.
yeah.
I don't like
have
that.
the physical
yeah.
tickets.
Yeah.
But we cash them out. We don't have like
Cash them out.
100,000
Sure.
little tickets.
What'd you get?
Well, we were
But
thinking
we're
about
saving
saving
them
for
up.
like a PS5 or something like that, because there's like the more tickets you get, there's some unbelievable
Yeah.
prizes.
There's still a Targaryen presence on this series. We've heard the name mentioned quite a few times, and at the time of this series, the last Targaryen dragons have died out. So I feel like the power dynamic of how the Targaryens are viewed, that must change, especially with House of the Dragon being so fresh in all of our memories. Can you kind of speak to how the Targaryens are viewed in this series?
They're a house on the decline. People are starting to wonder why the Targaryens are still in charge at this point, when the thing that united the realm, united the kingdoms, or conquered the kingdoms, doesn't exist anymore. There's no dragons, and so they have to work just a little bit harder to keep things going, to keep themselves, firmly in power. So they show up to a backwater like Ashford, where they never would have gone before, to do something that I think a lot of them probably feel is a little beneath them. And obviously things go wrong when one of the younger members of that house decides that he's going to do something about maybe being forced to go to this place that he doesn't want to be in, and shows some of his petulance, which is very helpful for us because it kicks off Dunk's journey and your whole life, I suppose, in this world. So it was fortuitous for some, and very unlucky, unfortunately, for the Targaryens, and a further descent into, the original series, and where we pick them up at 90 years later.
And I only bring up the potential future because you said it's pretty close to the source material we're adapting here for A Night of the Seven Kingdoms, and you're working with much shorter compared to A Song of Ice and Fire and Fire and Blood. Is that part of the reason for the 6 episodes?
Yes, absolutely. We wanted to be as faithful as we could to the story and to the tone of these books, because we love these books. I think a lot of people out there love these books. It's a different side to Westeros while still feeling firmly in that world. 6 episodes, 30 minutes is exactly right. I think we get to expand a little bit on what is there, but mostly that came from a place of character and world building, you know, spending a little bit more time. If George had written each of those novellas as an actual novel, you know, what scenes, you know, would have been in there, what characters do we get to explore a little bit more. Lionel Baratheon we get to see a little bit more, which is fun. We get to see probably a little bit more of the Targaryens, and hopefully some good fighting as well.
Yeah, a lot of familiar family names in this series, but also the luxury of playing a little bit closer to the main Game of Thrones timeline. We know that there are some Game of Thrones characters that we're familiar with from the original series that are alive during this time. Master Aemon comes to mind. Is there anything you can tease about any familiar faces possibly popping up in Night of the Seven Kingdoms?
So, you know, this first one, I think you're gonna hear some names. I'm not sure you're gonna see the faces yet, but there are plans for faces as we move forward, hopefully, as we move forward with more seasons of this. But season 1, this is about Dunk, and this is about Egg and their relationship, and we're very ground up in this show, you know, so it's not so much about the lords and the ladies, the kings and the queens. We're just about what it's like to be a working guy trying to make it in the world.
Yeah, I like what you said about ground up, because Peter, we were talking about this before we started rolling. It's nice to feel like we're in season 1 of Game of Thrones again. House of the Dragon was and still is an amazing series, but we really hit the ground running. The first episode of that series, we're playing with dragons and fire and all this crazy stuff that we didn't get to until multiple seasons into the main Game of Thrones. So for you two, both Peter and Dexter, can you kind of speak to getting to start a little bit slow and slowly crescendo towards where you want this series to go?
Yeah, it was like, I suppose the way that the story begins is really helps with the actual making of it too. And everything was fairly chronological as well when we shot too. So you could feel the beats of his journey as he moved along, and that really helped me for finding the actual emotional journey of it too, for sure. And like, and the thing is as well is that obviously he doesn't meet Egg until they don't start to have a proper relationship for a little while, and when I got through that, it only got easier because I had Dexter to rely on. It was I think 85% of the time, it was Dexter leading me through scenes. So yeah, I think the chronological aspect of it, the way we shot it, really helped with that. And obviously, you start with there's a beautiful silence that you start with in the show, and you get a lens of Dung's personality from the off, chatting to his horses and things like that. So yeah, that does really help, and it does give you sort of as I said, like a quiet, sort of tranquil view of Westeros, which feels a little bit like that nostalgic sort of season 1 start in the original Game of Thrones, where you're hitting Winterfell and you see Jon and all his brothers and stuff, and finding direwolves and all those things. And there's something like organic or something that kind of starts to fall away, but not in a negative sense, but you're from, I suppose, 5 on, as we said before, it's like you're in the thick of it. Of course you are with the story, so it felt nice to get back to that sort of season 1 sort of aspect of the original. What do you think?
Well, to be honest, I mean, I haven't watched any of the Game of Thrones and stuff, but I really do like the story, and I mean, obviously, what I think about the Game of Thrones, all I really know is that they're trying to fight over the throne, and I know it's like really gory and great stories, but I feel like this is really different, but in a good way, and it's a different aspect of all the stories, and I really like. I mean, I've watched all of the episodes, and I really have hope into this one.
And it's the first time there's a character that you're following that doesn't wants the moon and the stars. He just wants to survive in a very scary world. You know, he kind of doesn't really know what he wants. But
and then
it's kind of refreshing.
Yeah, it's going to be a fun journey ahead. I could talk to you guys all day about Game of Thrones, but unfortunately, that's all the time we have. Congratulations on this series, and enjoy New York Comic Con. I hope you get to see some Game of Thrones cosplay out on the floor.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for having us.